What we're going to do is we're going to look at the standard deviation. The standard deviation is a type of spread. So we've learned about one spread, and that would be the range. And now what we're going to do is we're going to look at another spread, which is the standard deviation. The range was easy because what we did was we took the maximum minus the minimum, and that was our range. The standard deviation is a little bit more difficult. We actually have a more complicated formula. The standard deviation is related to the mean. So if you look right here, in the formula, what we have is the mean. So in order to find the standard deviation, our first step is to find the mean. Now, once we find the mean, what we're going to do is we're going to subtract each of the numbers from the mean and square each of the differences. So if you notice, we take our first value, subtract the mean, and then what we do is we square it. We take the second value, subtract the mean, square it. We take the next value, subtract the mean, square it, all the way to our last value. And our last value is the x of n. Whatever our last value is, subtract it from the mean and square it. Then what we do is we find the sum. Notice that we're adding each of the values together. We're going to divide it by however many numbers there are. And our last step is to take the square root. So this square root part, that's our last step. And that's how we find the standard deviation. We're going to do a few examples of finding the standard deviation. Then what we're going to do is we're going to describe the standard deviation. How we describe the standard deviation is based off of this statement right here. The standard deviation is the average distance, and the average distance, remember, when we add up all the numbers and divide it by however many numbers there are. So it's the average distance, but it's the average distance from the mean. And the reason that it's from the mean is because we're subtracting it from the mean. And that's how we describe the standard deviation. So let's look at a couple examples. What we're going to do is we're going to find the mean and we're going to find the standard deviation. So remember, when we find the mean, what we do is we add up all the numbers, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, and we divide it by how many numbers there are. So there's 5 numbers. When we add them up, we have 3 plus 3, which is 6, plus 4, which is 10, plus 5, which is 15. So 15 over 5, which is 3. So that's our mean. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find our standard deviation. Now with the standard deviation, we're going to take the square root, and we're going to take our first value, which is 1. We're going to subtract it from the mean, and we're going to square it. We're going to take our next value, which is 2. We're going to subtract it from the mean, and we're going to square it. We're going to take our third value, which is 3. We're going to subtract it from the mean, and we're going to square it. We're going to take our fourth value, which is 4. We're going to subtract it from the mean, and we're going to square it. We're going to take our last value, which is 5. We're going to subtract it from the mean, and we're going to square it. Then we're going to add them all up and divide it by how many numbers there are. And our last step is we take the square root. When we're writing the square root, you want to make sure the square root is covering the numerator and the denominator. So we're going to do 2 steps in 1 right here. What we're going to do is we're going to subtract it and square it. So 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Squared is 4. Whenever we square something, it's always positive. 2 minus 3 is 1. Squared is 1. 3 minus 3 is 0. Squared is 0. 4 minus 3 is 1. Squared is 1. And 5 minus 3 is 2. 2 squared is 4. We're going to divide it by 5. We're going to do 2 steps in 1. We're going to add them up and then divide it by 5. So 4 plus 1 is 5, plus 0 is 5. 6 plus 4 is 10. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So we're going to take the square root of 2. This is where you need a calculator. We're going to take out our calculator and we're going to find the square root of 2, which is 1.41. And that right there is our answer. Let's look at letter B. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to find the mean. So 25 plus 5 plus 25 plus 10 plus 2. And we're going to divide it by 5 because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. This one's a little bit more difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out my calculator right away and I'm going to add up the 25 plus 25, which is 50, 60, 65, 67. So I have 67 over 5. I don't want a fraction because it's difficult to subtract fractions and then square them. So I'm going to go straight to the decimal answer. So I'm going to take the 67 and I'm going to divide it by 5. And I get 13.4. So hopefully you have your calculator out. We're going to find the standard deviation. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different than the last one. Do you see that there are two numbers that are exactly the same? And that would be 25. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 25 minus 13.4 like I did before, but I'm going to put a 2 in front of it because there's two of them. So instead of writing it twice, I'm just going to put a 2 because that just saves me time. Then I'm going to do my next one, which is 5 minus 13.4 squared. Then I'm going to do the next one, which is 10 minus 13.4 squared. And then the last one, which is 2 minus 13.4 squared. And I'm dividing the whole thing by 5. Once again, I want the square root to cover the denominator also, so I'm going to make it a little bit larger. So now when we're finding our square root, I'm going to bring out my calculator. I'm going to do the 2 steps in one. I'm going to subtract them, square it, and in this case, times it by 2. So I'm going to take the 25 minus 13.4, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to square it and times it by 2. And what I get is 269.12. Then I'm going to take my next one. So I'm going to go 5 minus 13.4. I'm going to square it. And what I get is 70.5. Then the next one, I'm going to take 10 minus 13.4, and I'm going to square it. And I get 11.56. And then my last one, I'm going to go 2 minus 13.4. Then I'm going to square it, and that gives me 129.96. Dividing the whole thing by 5. Once again, I'm going to do 2 steps in one. I'm going to add up my 4 numbers, and I'm going to divide it by 5. So I have the 269.12 plus 70.56 plus 11.56 plus 129.96. I'm going to divide it by 5. And I get the square root of 96.24. And then when I take the square root of 96.24, what I get is 9.81. And that right there is my answer.